Overtraining is when you're putting too much load and you don't have enough recovery and you're pushing yourself all the time. At some point, you get overtrained, so your body doesn't recover. So first stage is like, oh, I'm actually tired. I don't want to do anything. But the next stage is when you like, oh, I actually have to train and I want to train, but it's not making you feel good anymore. And you feel like you're not progressing. Actually, progress happens in recovery rather than in training. Is you have to load yourself and then you have to rest. And during the rest and recovery, the adaptation happens.
Most of us think progress comes from pushing harder. One more workout, one more day without stopping. In a culture that glorifies hustle and constant output, we rarely talk about the skill of regulation. In this episode, I explore what ultramarathon training reveals about power, restraint, and sustainable ambition with elite runner and coach Kate Preobrazhenskaya. Having completed many races, balancing hours of weekly training with motherhood and running her own business, Kate understands something most high performers learn the hard way. If you've ever equated exhaustion with progress, this conversation may shift how you think. Welcome to Mind Blend. I'm your host, Karen Chong. In each episode, I talk with people who've experienced something real, and we break down what made the difference, so you can see yourself and the world around you more clearly, spot what you might have been missing, and move through life with a clearer way forward. If you like what you're hearing, share with those around you and subscribe to Mind Blend. You will help a lot in spreading the insights for anyone who can use them. Let's blend. Today, I'm mind blending with ultramarathon runner and training coach Kate Preobrazhenskaya. She has run 126 kilometers through mountains, leads a global running training school, co-founded a training app called Hero, and is a mother of 2 children. Hi, Kate. Welcome to Mind Blend.
Hi. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being here today. And just from that intro, people might have formed an immediate image of you, like ultra ambitious, physically strong women. So let's dig in a little more. Can you tell us about how you got into the running career, I'd say, and how has your relationship with running evolved as your life changes?
Well, I have gotten into running in a very, I would say, typical way. To be honest, I think initially when I was in my, early 20s, the main goal was just to, stay a little bit fit, I would say, and just control my weight. I was always sort of focused on looking fit, if that makes sense. But at that particular period of my life, it was more just about looking fit rather than actually performing at a certain level or, reaching some goals, like sports goals or physical goals. But I remember that when I was 21, there was a discount at a local gym for students. And I thought, well, okay, I've always been doing a bit of training on my own at home, just, very simple home workouts. And I thought, fine, I'm just going to buy the membership to the gym since it's, heavily discounted. I went there a few times, I did some machines, and then I saw people running on treadmills. And I thought, well, maybe that's a good way to, lose some calories. I got into a treadmill and I think I ran something like 3 kilometers maximum. I literally thought I would spit my lungs out. It was so hard for me. And I think I had that initial, getting to know running was a very typical way of doing it. Pushing yourself hard, trying to do it fast. And then what I felt is what I've heard from many other people after that it's like, running's not for me. It's so hard. It's terrible. I can't breathe. It's like, why would you ever put yourself through that torture? But I think I have this very specific mindset. I thought instead of saying it's not for me, I thought it is so hard for me. And I saw people running on treadmills And I thought, how on earth can they actually do that? And if they can do it, why can't I do it? So for me, the idea that the machines, let's say, were so much easier than running actually pushed me towards running rather than away from it. But I remember that at some point I almost got addicted to it in the sense that it was hard for me, but at the same time, I felt like this is my sort of space, my personal time. But I think when I was like those years, I was pretty young. I think the main focus was still on just keeping, fit and, counting the calories and everything. So, like a very typical kind of a gym, let's call it like the gym relationship with running. So years went by, I kept on doing that, just 3 times a day. And then what really changed everything. Oh, then I had my first child. I got married, had my first child. I kept on running for the first trimester of pregnancy, I guess. And then I remember, I mean, you can run through the whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
But to me, like I had zero knowledge of how to run, what to do. So to me, it just kind of felt natural. Up until my tummy started growing, I was like, I can still run. And then I just, started walking and swimming. But I think I always had this kind of a mindset that I need some movement in my life because it was a way to get into my own headspace and probably process life. So it's kind of a cheap psychotherapy because at the time, I remember myself thinking that when I need to make a decision, if I just go and run, at the end of the run, it might just come to me.
I have heard that.
Yeah, because I think that like it's, once again, this has changed a lot for me because now running is such a huge part of my life. It's literally like brushing my teeth. I can't even imagine my life without it. But when I had my second child, and after that, there was a huge shift. I think I sort of relaunched another Instagram account at the time, and all of a sudden, and I mentioned running as one of my interests, and I think social media started kind of sending me, in my feed and to my feed, like I had all those running videos and stuff. And I realized that back in Moscow then, this culture started growing, and I felt like I was left behind. Like, oh my God, because I thought that I'm like a very good runner because even just doing 3 times a week, 10Ks to me felt like, wow, I'm definitely way above average. I'm like so good at it. And that all of a sudden I see all those people running ultra like marathons, half marathons. And I'm like, where have they all come from? That's how it felt. I felt like, wow, I just got left out. There's this whole community growing and I'm not doing it and they're running outside. And why is that? So I think that was the sort of the turning point when I started thinking about marathons, obviously half marathons at first, and then running outside. And I think at that time I got a coach. And when you get a coach, one of the ways it can go is that like before that, some things felt impossible for you, like even the thought of running a marathon felt, because I remember when I talked to her first, I said, well, I just want to do a half marathon and probably that's it for me. Kind of, I can do 10Ks. So 21K is probably hard, but manageable. But when you start talking to a coach and you work together, like the perspective of a coach is way wider and obviously they know what's actually possible. And that's why things like marathons also become a little bit more, I don't know, ordinary for you because people talk about it. You talk about it with a coach and you kind of start trying to try this on, just like you try clothes on. You kind of mentally think, okay, maybe I can be a marathoner. Why not? And like slowly you get into thinking, well, I can actually give it a try. So I think that was the time when I started running more often, like almost every day, and training, like, and getting some structured training. So I think that was the time when like the whole thing changed. And after a few years and having done a few marathons, I realized I actually want to make it my career. And that was exactly the time when I was thinking of going back to work. And I used to work as a journalist. And I thought maybe I actually want to become a running coach rather than going back to the career that I left behind. And from then on, did a few courses of, I studied to become a running coach. I launched my own school, a running school. Then I moved to the UK at some point. Another thing was that ever since I became a running coach, I never really felt like I have work anymore, in the sense of it kind of blended and coexisted with my hobby and with my passion. So it obviously it's still work, but it felt very different from anything that I've done before, because I still felt like I want to put my heart and soul into it.
Yeah, just listening to your story, I can see why you are drawn to it. If you kind of get into the zone and everything that's not important falls behind.
Yeah.
So I want to hear what's like a typical day for you. Because balancing any work and life is hard enough.
Yeah.
When it comes to demanding sports training, it's a different level because your body is just exhausted. So yeah, tell me more.
Well, to start with, I'd say that now, I mean, I train probably like the total sum of my training would come to something like 15 hours a week,
Okay.
which obviously on the weekends you get longer runs or longer trainings, but then generally that's like at least two, like I usually train for like 1.5 hours a day, and then over the weekend, on the weekend it would be longer. But generally speaking, that's quite a lot of time that I have to spend on running. It's not just running, but most of it would be running, unless I'm injured. But like now, I would say, because my kids are much older now, and also I work um, from home, or I have to like go somewhere for work as a coach. It has become a little bit easier compared to how it was even, let's say, 10 years ago. Because I remember at the times when my kids were really little, I could never leave them on their own, obviously. So I remember that there was a certain period of my life when I knew that I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to be out running 5:30 every single day, because by 7 I had to be back home so that my husband would be able to, get ready for work and leave for work. And that was probably the time that really trained me to stay very organized. Because the thing was that if I skipped that, there would be no chance in doing any training later in the day. I still had a treadmill on my balcony, and sometimes I would be like, if I skipped the run in the morning, I would be doing it like 10 or 11 p.m. But that's kind of already really hard and not very physiological, if that makes sense. It's not very healthy. And then my younger would wake up sometimes, and then I would have to stop. So I just knew I had to kind of do anything to squeeze in that run before the day began. And to be honest, that helped me a lot later in life as well, because I always have this attitude that if I have a very busy day, I can run very early in the morning. And I know that many people like who are, let's say, very dedicated runners, that's kind of the life hack. So I'd say like life hack number one is actually doing the training before anything else in the day. So now I quite often incorporate running as commute into my work. Like let's say even just today, I had a training session with a client, and it was 10K away from me, and that was just the distance that I had to run today, because I'm recovering from injury, so I'm not doing anything insane at the moment. And yeah, I just ran that. So I didn't have to wake up early morning. I just ran there. Like the session was at like 12, I guess. And, 11 a.m. I just left home and ran there. So that's another thing. For me, maybe having coaching as one of my main things that I do makes it easier, because I don't have to change into a suit, take a shower. I can just run there, do the coaching session,
Yeah.
get back
You almost
home,
want to
and
be
then
running to it.
yeah. I mean, I would appear there in my
Mhm.
running kit anyway,
Mhm.
so it makes it easier. In winters, it's harder, because when you coach outside, if you arrive there like really lightly dressed and sweaty, it can get cold,
Mhm.
but then you can always take like the backpack with you. But even if you work in the office, I'd say it is still possible to just run there in the
Mhm.
morning. Many offices have showers,
Yeah.
or there's a gym somewhere near the office
Mhm.
that you can like get membership, but like the simplest gym, and you can just take a shower and and get on with your work.
Mhm.
Um, a part of your question was about the recovery.
Yeah.
And I must say that with age, it's getting harder and harder.
Mhm.
And in my 20s and even in my early 30s, like I'm turning 39. soon, but like even in my early 30s, I still took recovery for granted.
Huh.
Literally, it felt like I can just do, anything. Next day, I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it
Mm-hmm.
felt. I think after the age of 35, that has the shift became
Mm-hmm.
really palpable, if that
Uh-huh.
makes sense. Because I all of a sudden I felt like, oh, actually, if I don't do my stretches, I kind of feel lower back
Mm-hmm.
pain next
Mm-hmm.
morning. And then, and if I don't do that, if I don't do my like Theragun, then my
Mm-hmm.
my legs and my muscles are really
Yeah.
stiff. So also now, apart from the training time, I need some time for recovery,
Mm-hmm.
much more time. And also I have to become more cautious with not really overloading
Mm-hmm.
myself, which is another side. So like, it seems like doing loads of exercise is good for you, and it is, because we're made for
Yeah.
movement. But at the same time, if we push ourselves too hard, we do get injured. And with age, that becomes even more obvious,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say. Like I have gotten injured, like even last year was probably the best lesson for me,
Mm-hmm.
because in February, I ran myself into a stress fracture. I literally
Mm-hmm.
started running
Mm-hmm.
through pain because I felt like I really want to, like, I don't want to, like, because the training was going so well. And I felt like, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a bit of pain.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be
yeah.
fine with it. And then it ended up with me not being able to run for 5 months and having to do loads
Oh.
of bike. That was a nightmare because I'm so used to
Mm-hmm.
it, and I like being outdoors, and I like, as I said, like running in the morning, greeting the day.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense,
Yeah.
that's such a huge part of my life now.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I don't run in the morning, which sometimes I don't do anymore because I can do it in other parts of like times of day. But for me, it's always been
Yeah.
that I can
Mm.
meet the day, if that makes sense, and see the birth of day.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Like it's a nightmare to
It
not.
is such an amazing experience. You're like out there, like it, yeah. So like I'm not being able to do that was
Yeah.
so hard.
Mm-hmm. So I want to see if you can remember the moments before you went too far.
Yeah, I can. I think that so I've always been saying that you have to listen to your body and understand whether the pain that you feel is a damaging one or it's just your body adapting to training. Because obviously, when you train, you can get pains here and there. It's completely fine. You don't have to stop every single time you feel even the slightest pain anywhere. But you kind of have to listen carefully to your body and feel, oh, is that actually damaging me? Or is that just, that's kind of, adaptive pain, if that makes sense. And if it's getting worse with every next training, obviously it's damaging you. But I remember like I mean, obviously that wasn't the only time I got injured, but let's like, if we focus on that time when I got a stress fracture. So I went to San Francisco just for a holiday with my daughter. And obviously I didn't have any other ways of training there other than running. And the day, I think so I had that pain. It started like being in my shin and the shin bone. But it wasn't too bad. So I felt like, oh, there are so many times when I felt pain and everything was fine. So I'm just going to be pushing through it. But then I think at the time, so there were a few things to it. I was training for Brighton Marathon. I think it was Brighton Marathon, which is in April. And with my coach, we decided that that particular one, I'd go for like a sub 3 hour marathon. Because I felt like, well, I haven't been doing fast marathons for a long time. So why not actually see if I can do a fast marathon and just kind of mix up my running with something more speedy. But at the same time, probably deep inside, I was very scared because, when you haven't done that for a long while and you've been just doing the ultra marathons, like, can I actually do it or not?
Mm. Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, and we were pretty good with training. It was going well, and I was doing loads of speed work. And I think that I got so much focused on that goal that I felt like I am still, like, I can still push through because like, when you do ultra marathons, you do feel loads of pain. So the whole idea of pushing through the pain is familiar. But there is obviously a difference between just pushing through the pain because you've been running for 24 hours and obviously you're in pain. And when you actually feel the pain in the training, when you're not supposed to be feeling it, at least not that bad. But I was in San Francisco. I didn't have any other way of training. I didn't want to make a pause. And I was also going through quite a hard period of life at the time, like in my, personal life, like things weren't going that good. And running, as I said, for me was always being like a way of getting into my headspace. And it's sort of a psychotherapy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's not only for myself. It is this way for other people. And I would particularly say here that it is important to differentiate your training with that mental part, because once it becomes your psychotherapist, you get so attached to it because you need that kind of dopamine every day that sometimes you can forget that actually it's very physical as well, and it can be damaging your body. And I think a few things coincided at that time, like not being able to train any other way, having the goal of a
Mhm.
sub-3 marathon in mind, and also like not the easiest time in life when I actually needed running so much just for my mental health, if that makes sense. And I just kind of completely thought, well, I'm just going to push through. Like, this isn't going to break me. And I did push through, and I ended up, doing an MRI and realizing
Mm.
that it's a stress fracture, and I'll have to give up on my goal of I still, yeah, I still kept on running for a few more days because I remember that training when I did, which was like super hard, and super painful, but I still kept on doing it afterwards. And then at some point I realized I just can't. But I think
Mhm.
like this is a good lesson to understand that you have to evaluate the risks, and you have
Mm.
to sort
Mhm.
of stay, let's call it sober, if that makes sense, and actually be objective about if it makes sense to keep on pushing or not. Certainly there are some moments in life. And I remember there was another situation in my life, a few years before that, when it was a very deliberate choice to injure myself.
Huh?
Um, yes, I mean, I know how it sounds. It
Mhm.
sounds really
Well,
strange, but
I will listen to
going,
the end.
yeah, going into detail. So it was 2022,
Mhm.
and I was signed up for a London Marathon. And usually London Marathon is in April, but because it was one of the post-COVID years, it was
Mhm.
still in September, I think.
Mm.
And as you remember, 2022 was the year when the war in Ukraine began.
Yeah.
For many Russian, it was like a hard thing to
Mm.
kind of,
Cope
when you
with,
come,
yeah.
yeah, to cope with,
Mhm.
because obviously, I'm very much against it. And it
Mhm.
just felt really heavy because you kind of feel like, I don't want to go into the details here because we're not
Yeah.
talking about it, but it was a
Mhm.
very heavy burden to carry. And I felt like, and I was signed up for London Marathon in September, and I started getting plantar fasciitis, which is when the sole of your foot hurts,
Mm.
in
Mhm.
the beginning of August, and I could still continue running, but it kind of got more and more painful. But I kept on doing it, but I sort of was managing my running, and I was getting ready for the marathon because I had a slot, so I wanted to do it. And at some point, I realized that it hurts quite a bit. And if I continue running, I'm probably gonna get into an injury. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I think that at that particular instance of my life, I felt like if I'm not gonna do the marathon, it will feel like giving up.
Mm.
And I felt
Mhm.
like if I give up in that, it's gonna have a similar effect on everything else in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like mentally, I felt like this would break me. Like if I can't do this marathon, it is literally going to mentally break me. So I made a
Mhm.
deliberate decision. I understood that probably after that, I'm going to be out of running for a few months, but I thought I'm still going to do it.
Mm.
And the
Mhm.
injury happened before the marathon, not long before the marathon. So I kind of
Yeah.
felt, okay, I'm going to do it before the marathon. You do a tapering, which is when you reduce the loads quite a bit, like for a few
Mhm.
weeks, and then you go into the race. So I did everything I could do. I got the kinesio tapes. I got more cushioned shoes because usually I run in really like flat and uncushioned
Mhm.
shoes, which is different from what's, let's say, the global trend in running now. But that's kind of my own approach. I got myself more cushioned shoes, and I felt like I'm just going to do it like the best I can do it. I know it's going to hurt. I know I won't be able to run afterwards, but I need to do it. And I remember like switching on some songs by some like a few Russian bands, which are like super opposed to
Mm-hmm.
war and,
Mm-hmm.
the government back in Russia. And they're like, punk rock bands. So I had that
Mm-hmm.
music in my ears, and literally I was literally running against everything that was happening in the
Mm.
world, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it was a super, super painful run. It was super, like, for the first half, it felt more or less fine. But after, like, I remember crossing Tower Bridge, and that's something like, I guess, kilometer 18 or maybe 19 of the marathon. So it's not even halfway through yet. And then you have this tunnel. And I remember that by the time I got to the tunnel
Mm.
that you have to like run, and then like the route turns going like already towards the finish line, I felt, okay, now the pain is really, really bad. And it started
Mm.
hitting me, and I had to reduce my speed. And like, I remember when I crossed the finish line, I literally burst into tears because it was like mentally so hard for me as well. But I was
Mm.
happy that I pushed through. And that's like,
Mm.
even the
Mm.
fact that I couldn't run for a few months afterwards, that particular situation, it did make sense to me.
It was
And I
worth
think
it.
like, yeah, like I mean, if I had to do it again, I'd probably make the same decision. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of actually helped me to stay afloat mentally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So every time you're feeling the pain, I'm sure there's this mental struggle because it's usually from the two incidents that you told me, it was your mind telling you to continue. What is that dialogue like when you're debating?
Like in the moment, so if, let's say if you're running and you feel the pain, so the dialogue is usually, like first you start with, I'm gonna see, where's the pain coming from? Like, is it bad, or, how I'm feeling? And then when you realize it's pretty hard, it's one, like your rational mind is telling you, you should stop now and, not push through, and then see how you feel tomorrow. But then also there is something either competitive or just very, what's the right word for it? I'm wondering, resilience in you, like this
Mm.
natural resilient, like, I don't know, character that you have telling you, I'm actually stronger than that. And you kind of start competing with the injury, if that makes sense, or with the
Mm.
pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also because as an ultra runner, and not just ultras, I mean, this applies to any long distance runner, you're actually used to, you know, pushing
The
yourself
pain.
through the pain, because
Mm-hmm.
when you do races, it makes sense. You don't want to get injured still, but you do get the pain, and it's like normal, let's say. It's not it's not you feeling like, oh, I actually want to like feel pity for myself and be kind to myself. You sort of want to be kind to yourself, but at the same time, you can do it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
always the kind of trying to evaluate the risks and think, wow, I actually want to finish the training. And you would actually, like, deep inside, you would probably want to push through. But then it's your kind of rational mind telling you, come on, you have to stop. Like, just recently, I had some, like, a minor hip injury. And that was the time when I felt the pain, and I said, okay, now I'm going to stop and I'm going to do a bit of bike. And probably this is the first time when that was like my very first thought and decision. And I'm happy I made that decision.
Mm-hmm. So it's really, you kind of have to have the balance of your rational mind
Yes,
and
exactly.
how you are reading the signals from
Yeah,
your
exactly.
body. So that will be different for everyone.
It would be definitely different for everyone. That's
Mm-hmm.
true. But
Mm-hmm.
it's it's good to learn not to get carried away in terms of, I can, get to my goal,
Mm-hmm.
not to be too focused on your goal, and not to, as I said, not to let physical exercise become your psychotherapist, in terms of you get addicted to it, like as to a pill that makes you feel better mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have other pillars in your life
Mm-hmm.
which would also keep you afloat, other than just the exercise, like, I don't know, meditation, psychotherapy, whatever, friends, family, work, whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
like, just some leisure time, whatever makes you feel good as well. Like it shouldn't be just like there's this analogy which I heard in one of the more of psychotherapy videos at some point. Like if there's a table, and it was more about relationships actually, but to me it's also like a relationship with running. So it's like the speaker who was talking about it. They said if you have a table, you need four kind of pillars, to have it on. Because if you have just one, and they were talking about your relationship, like you have a relationship with a person, and that's just one
Mm-hmm.
thing that keeps you there afloat. When you break up, it's a complete disaster in life. But
Yeah.
if you have a few points of contact with the ground, and that makes sense, and
Mm-hmm.
you're standing on all like
Mm-hmm.
fours, let's say, if one thing gets taken out of you, you can still remain in, like, maybe you'll need to balance a little bit and catch your balance, but you're still there, you're still standing, and you're still fine. Same thing applies for running. If physical exercise is the only thing that is kind of kept keeping you going, and all of a sudden you get hit with an injury, you will want to push through because you feel like, oh, I just can't. I still have to clinch. I have to still be, it has to be a part of my life. But then
Mm-hmm.
if you have other things in life, that's fine. Like, I can't run. I can do something different. And then I'm going to recover and I'm going to go back to
Yeah.
running. So
Yeah.
it's more about keeping the balance and not being like addicted to something, like a very
Mm-hmm.
certain thing that you're doing in life,
Mm-hmm.
and not
Yeah.
relying on it too much.
Just like you were cycling when you had an injury.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like now, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
every time I get pain or injured, I do cycling, and sometimes it can be just a few days. Sometimes it can take a month or so. But yeah, like I have something that I can replace. It's different for me. Cycling is very different from running. I don't get the same emotions from it. But still, there is something that keeps me fit. But also, there are other things in my life which keep me, feeling good about myself and just about life.
Mm-hmm.
But you
Now.
see, I had to go to walk a certain path to get that, because there were
Mm-hmm.
periods in my life when running felt like almost the only thing,
Yeah.
which is, making me feel good and keeping me afloat. So
Mm-hmm.
there has been quite a lot of work on myself that I had to do to kind of make sure that now it's much more balanced.
Yeah. Even when you were talking about in 2022, you felt like if I didn't do this,
Yeah,
everything would fall apart.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
that. So now I want to ask you to put your training coach hat on.
yeah.
And so when you're training your
Clients, runners, yeah, athletes.
do you see like it does overtraining exist? Is there something called overtraining? How does that look like?
Oh, very much so. There is such a thing that's called overtraining. So basically, from theoretical concept, overtraining is when you're putting too much load and you don't have enough recovery and you're pushing
Mm-hmm.
yourself all the time. At
Mm-hmm.
some point, you get overtrained. So your body doesn't recover. It doesn't get rid of lactate acid as it has to. You get
Mm-hmm.
you get mental fatigue. Your muscles become more stiff. You become less flexible. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of everything builds up. And then there are two stages of overtraining actually. So at the first stage of overtraining, you would actually feel really fatigued, and you would probably like feel tired, and you would have higher heart rate, like if we talk about like biological markers or physiological markers, and the same effort. But then if you push through that, there is the second stage of overtraining when actually your heart rate is going to be lower, and you're not really going to feel as fatigued anymore, but you're just going to be like always in a very sort of you will stop progressing,
Mm-hmm.
and most probably you're going to get injured. But at that point, when you're at that stage of overtraining, it's already very hard to step back, because you have to actually step back a lot and let yourself
Mm-hmm.
body recover. Because when you're at that stage, you're like very much into training already and you want to continue training. So first
Yeah.
stage is like, oh, I'm actually tired. I don't want to do anything. But the next stage is when you like, oh, I actually have to train and I want to train, but it's not making you feel good anymore. And you feel like you're not progressing. So one of the indicators is that you're not progressing anymore. That would mean you are not recovering enough, because actually progress happens in recovery rather than in training. So like the simplest way
Mm-hmm.
to explain it is you have to load yourself, and then you have to rest, and during the rest and recovery, the adaptation happens and your body becomes stronger.
Ah.
Once you're recovered, you load again a bit more. And then in those little steps, you progress. And that in the gym, this can be, you know, doing the gym sessions, then resting, then doing it gym sessions with a bit more weights. But in running and in like cardio trainings, you can be running hard like one day and then having a recovery run or a rest day the next day. And then you also have those kind of cycles of few weeks of load and 1 week of recovery when you train much less. And then actually that helps you like on a spiral. You sort of like go on a spiral and, go up, up, and up.
Yeah, the concepts of recovery, I see it in a lot of fitness programs that I follow. And it's hard, like, especially for people who trains on a regular basis. Theoretically, they understand recovery is important.
Yeah.
But on like your rational mind, it almost makes me feel guilty to rest because I go through the struggle of, well, I'm training, I set a goal to reach this goal in 1 month. If I rest, I'm lagging behind. Like, how should we deal with that?
I know exactly the feeling. I think like the ways to deal with it is, first of all, to actually understand the whole concept that I've just now explained, that you actually need rest to progress. Another way, but some people get, as I said, well, maybe not addicted, but very much used to the endorphins that they get from training. And in this situation, I would say mix things up a little bit. So if you do some, like, let's say you're running or you're doing something, that there can be different types of sports. But on the days when you have to recover, if you feel like you still have to do something, it's fine to keep moving, but then maybe take a very easy ride on a bike outside or do some yoga or go for a swim or just take a walk in the park, because actually active recovery is better than passive recovery. So a recovery day doesn't necessarily mean lying on your couch, the whole day or just sitting in the office without moving at all.
Yeah, that's what everyone, like a lot of people think that.
Yeah, you can still take a long walk and that would be very good recovery, but not the same thing as you're usually doing. Or like, once again, if you still want to run, just take a very easy, chilled, shorter run, which wouldn't really load your system as much. And then another thing, which is probably the best, is actually having a coach that would be able to communicate with you all the time, look at what you're doing, give you a plan. And then actually, like, I'm a running coach, but I have a running coach still that coaches me, simply for the reason that it's very hard sometimes to assess your own state better than a professional who would do it and have like a sort of a broader view and everything,
like
and
an
on the process.
outsider.
And you kind of put that responsibility on someone else. So you say, I want to get there, and the goal can be whatever, even it doesn't even have to be a running related goal. But and you kind of say, you're going to get me there. And then you just listen to what your coach tells you. And the coach would say, well, now we need some more rest. Me being a coach, I can say that sometimes it's very, like, sometimes you have to motivate people to actually do the training, but that's even less difficult than actually to tell the people not to do some training or to get some deload phase, because some people, especially the hyperachievers, people who see the goal and want to get there the most, the fastest way, sometimes it's hard to tell them, can you please, because what I see quite often, I would say you have to do a recovery run, which is a slow run. But they would say, well, I don't want to because my Strava is an app, which is like a sort of a biggest, sort of community, let's say like a social training app. And they would say, well, my followers on Strava are going to see that I'm running slow. And I'm trying to say, well, come on, race in the races, but train during the training. If I'm telling you, you have to do a very slow run, please do a slow run. It's completely fine. It's going to be slow. But for some people who are super competitive, or maybe who care a lot about what others think about them, that can be a challenge as well, because they're like, oh, well, I don't want to have a slow run on my Strava. But I think mostly now people who get into training slowly, it's also about educating yourself. And once you start understanding the concept, I think it makes it much easier to actually follow the plan. I mean, another thing that I do, like even with the training apps, many of them are not really adaptive. And what's happening then is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
people get a nap and it's kind of, it pushes you all the time. It does have the recovery round, but then when you get ill and you miss a training, it's kind of
The
still
same.
pushing you forward,
Yeah.
but you have
Mm-hmm.
to actually have like take it more relaxed at first and more
Mm-hmm.
chilled. So like the lack of adaptivity in that is also a difficult thing for many people to understand, like what they actually have to do. So like the adaptivity and the ability of an app to actually change everything around if you've missed a training or you're feeling bad is a very beneficial thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what we're trying to do in Hero and have done in
Yeah.
Hero, but yeah, it's like a different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like what you said, the coach. It's like having a coach that looks at your performance.
Yes, it is having. Exactly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and even with coaches, like good coaches would actually look at your performance, listen to you. They would want to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
collect feedback from you all the time. They would look at your running metrics on the apps, like your heart rate, your pace, everything. But
Mm-hmm.
then obviously there are also coaches who have like 200 clients and they don't really care as much. They just give you a training plan and then, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in a month's time, they're like, oh, okay, what have you done? Let's see. So you know what I mean? It's kind of, it has to be an individual approach in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we're all built differently and same
Mm-hmm.
training isn't going to work for different people same way, 100%.
Yeah.
And also circumstances in life change as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like everyone's different. Some people do the same kind of training, they get injured, the other person doesn't.
Yes,
So, and
exactly,
for the
exactly.
runners community, there's this competitive aspect, or just the
Right.
like you are competing against yourself. Like, I can
Yes,
do this, you push
yes.
through, you get injured.
It is a good thing to compete against yourself, but not to the point of injury.
So, what would be your advice? This is actually an actual question that the listener submitted when they requested this topic. For someone who is injury prone,
Yeah.
but still want to chase their personal best, what's I like what you have said? Like all of them are already advices, but if you were to tell them like one thing to remember to help them achieve the personal best, even though they're injury prone, what's
Mm.
the most important thing?
You know, I mean, the way I want to answer this question is probably not the answer the listener would want to hear. And I would say
Mhm.
that if the situation is that you are like really injury prone and you keep on getting injured, think about it, why you need that personal best. Maybe it's your body telling you you don't really need that. So ask you like it's a more on a deeper and psychological level, like what will those numbers
Mm,
do? Why are they so important to you? And
mm,
think about getting the joy out of training, because after all, I think just being able to run or to do any training, whichever people would prefer, and just being able to move and live a full life is to me more important than the numbers. But like keeping that answer aside, because I appreciate that this isn't exactly,
mhm,
because the question inherently had the idea of still wanting to get the personal best. I would probably say like the one advice, to be honest, do mobility training. If we're talking about running, do loads of mobility training. I would like
mobility training. Okay.
mobility training. It's like joy. It's a very specific type of training. It's all about like natural movement and the mobility of your joints, especially if we're talking about getting older. And by older, I don't mean being, elderly. I just mean that when you're in your early 20s, your body forgives you much more. And doing mobility training is a big thing. It's not just the static stretching, which is good for you, but mobility is a huge thing for, you know, whichever sport, because running specifically, it's a very it's a very repetitive movement and you move in a very limited, um, let's say, amplitude, if that makes sense. So, but being able to use your joints and your muscles and, everything to a much greater, um, you know, extent, it keeps you like it reduces the risk of injury, because then in a situation when you have to like, make a bigger step
Hmm.
and you're already under endorphins, you don't feel the pain and you can do it, it's actually going to let you do it and you're not going to get injured. So yeah,
Hmm.
that would be my advice.
Thank you. I'm sure this person will appreciate that. It's both a psychological advice and like practical advice. And like you said earlier, like the theory and like the mentality of approaching running, it can be applied to daily life. A lot of it, like
Very much so.
continually pushing through. It's similar to someone who's like just work loads of hours, no
Yes.
rest,
Yes,
and
exactly.
just keep climbing the ladder. Eventually, they're gonna get injured.
To be honest, just on a general level, and this applies to running and to anything in life, make it whatever you're doing. And if you're like even much into it, still make it something that improves your life and a tool to getting somewhere rather than the meaning of your life. So if
Mm,
your work or your running or anything becomes the only thing in your life, it gets like it takes the enjoyment out of it.
mm, mm,
And
mm,
that when it's just like for me, because for me, like now I have come to an understanding that running and doing it, regularly is just a way of not limiting my mind by my body, if that makes sense. So for example, I love doing long, like multi-day routes in the mountains every summer. I just go on my own. I stay in hotels and like Airbnbs, but like the whole day I'm out like running.
mhm,
It's not a super challenging thing. I'm not doing anything insane, but I would like take a very long route and divide it into little stages every day. And I would like continuously run for a week. And that's what I want to be able to do. And that's why I'm training, not because I want to achieve a certain time, which
mm,
isn't bad on its own. Absolutely. I appreciate that many people want that. And that's, I used to want that as well. But to me now, it's like, I want this to be a tool of still staying active and being able and, having the stamina to do what I want to do, what my minds want to do, which is in this
mhm.
case, being in the mountains for a week, just running there. So I think like even with work, if people like become very workaholic, so like if you don't have time to enjoy yourself and go on holiday and spend time with your family, what's the point of it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it has to be a tool of, you have to keep it
Hmm.
balanced. I guess balance is the main thing.
Yeah. Like you earn a lot of money, but you
You
don't
can't
have
spend
the
them. You don't have
time
time
to
to spend
spend
them.
it.
Exactly. And that's what we hear quite a lot nowadays, actually.
Hmm. So for this last part, I want to play a quick rapid fire questions, just short answers,
Okay,
like
I'll try.
whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite recovery activity?
Walking, long walks.
Okay. What's the top misperception about ultra marathon runners?
Oh, that they are all super fit and slim, because in reality, there is a funny picture going around internet when you see like a sprinter who's super muscly, and then a marathoner who's super skinny and fit, and
Hmm.
then you see an
Hmm.
ultra marathoner who's actually like, a little bit even overweight or something. So I think that's the misperception. Doing
Ah,
ultra marathons isn't necessarily being super fit.
really? I had no idea.
Well, I'm not saying it's all. I mean, many ultra marathons are
Yeah,
super fit, but I'm just saying that it's not 100% a guarantee.
I see. So, what shoes do you wear when you're not running?
Ooh, just some fashionable ones. I mean, okay, my favorite ones are Converses because
Mm,
they look good and they're healthy.
hmm. Yeah, I used to have them too. Maybe I should get a new pair. What kind of music do you listen to while running?
I love rock music mainly. I'm a big fan
Mm,
of old school rock, and but if I need power songs, that would be Foo Fighters or Metallica.
yeah, very good choices. Do you choose protein shakes or actual solid food when you're really, really hungry?
When I'm really, really hungry, it would be solid food.
Yeah, like the protein shake, because I think you get hungry sooner. At least
Yeah,
that's me.
you get time, but you can put protein like powders into solid food as well. And that's
Mm,
probably the best.
yeah. Well, thank you very much to come on to the show and share your advice to runners and non-runners, because we can learn from this experience. There's so many things that like your rational mind is telling you you should do it, but your body is telling you the other way.
Yeah, actually, listening to your body is a very important thing, and I think kids know how to do it. And as we grow up, we get more
Mm.
disconnected from the body,
Hmm.
and getting connected back to your body is a super good skill.
Yeah. What a great way to end this episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Blend. If you enjoyed the conversation, Don't forget to follow and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn or leave me a comment. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and let's continue to open our minds and discover what's possible.